You're watching the Stories That Scare channel. There is no turning back now.
The camera only sees them. I was sitting on my couch watching TV when my phone buzzed. Ding. Doorbell camera. Person detected. Front yard. I glanced at the notification. It was a little after 11. My living room was dark except for the television and the lamp beside my couch. Outside, our neighborhood had settled into that nighttime quiet where you could hear an air conditioner kick on 3 houses away. I ignored the alert. Probably somebody walking a dog. Then, ding. Person detected. Front yard. Okay. I picked up my phone and opened the camera. My porch filled the bottom of the screen. Beyond it was my front yard, the sidewalk, part of the street, and across the way, that enormous oak tree beside the Higgins property. At first, nothing. Then I saw movement near the tree. I enlarged the picture. Timothy? It was Timothy Higgins, 18 years old. He lived with his parents, Warren and Marjorie, a few houses down. Timothy was halfway up the oak at 11 o'clock at night. What in the toasted turnips are you doing? Then I noticed 2 tiny lights blinking above him. Red, green. His drone. It was stuck high between 2 branches. Ah, that made sense. Timothy loved that thing. He'd saved all summer to buy it. Apparently, $800 was enough money to make an 18-year-old forget that gravity had never lost a competition. I settled back slightly. Leave it until morning, Timothy. Obviously, he couldn't hear me. He climbed higher. The old oak was massive, thick trunk, heavy branches spreading over the Higgins yard and halfway across the street. Timothy reached, missed the drone by maybe a foot. That's your sign. He climbed onto another branch. I sat forward again. Nope, that's enough tree. He stretched. His foot slid farther out. The branch bowed underneath him. Then, crack! Timothy dropped. My stomach jumped. He caught another branch with both hands. For a second, he just hung there, his legs swinging. Hold on! One hand slipped. Timothy, the other slipped. His body turned in the air, head down, and thud. He went headfirst into the ground. I froze. I didn't jump up, didn't scream, didn't run. For a few seconds, my brain simply refused to accept what my eyes had just watched. Timothy lay crumpled beneath the oak. Then I heard something through the camera microphone, a low sound. His arm moved, just barely. Oh no. Another moan, quieter. His fingers moved against the grass. Then his arm dropped. Silence. Timothy stopped moving. Completely. Timothy? I leaned toward the phone. I knew he couldn't hear me. Come on, man. Nothing. Move. Nothing. The television continued playing behind me, but I couldn't hear a word of it anymore. All I could hear was the faint hiss of the camera microphone. Wind through the leaves. A distant car. And nothing from Timothy. My stomach turned. Timothy Higgins looked like he'd just taken the ultimate checkout. That finally broke me loose. I jumped off the couch, caught my knee on the coffee table. Sweet gravy! I grabbed the front door, ran across my porch, and sprinted toward the Higgins property. Timothy! I crossed the street, reached the oak, and stopped. Nothing. I stared at the grass. No Timothy, no drone, no broken branch. I looked up. Every limb was intact. What in the chicken fried calculator? I walked around the trunk. Timothy? Nothing. I checked behind the tree. Empty. I looked toward the Higgins house. Dark. I even looked underneath a parked truck. I don't know why. Apparently my brain had decided maybe Timothy had bounced. Nothing. For probably a full minute, I stood beneath that tree, trying to make sense of it. Then I walked back across the street. Slowly. I kept looking over my shoulder. When I reached my house, I stepped inside, closed the door, and locked it. I stood in my living room. Television still playing, lamp still glowing, everything exactly as I'd left it. I picked up my phone. The recording was still there. Timothy climbed. Branch broke. He fell. He moaned, stopped moving. I watched it again. Then, ding! I nearly launched my phone across the room. Person detected. Front yard. I opened the live feed. Timothy was underneath the oak. I immediately looked through my actual living room window. Empty. Back to the phone. Timothy was there. Same place he'd fallen. Only now he was getting up. Slowly, his arms pushed against the ground. His head hung strangely to one side. One shoulder sat lower than the other. His movements weren't slow like some movie zombie. They were jerky. Quick little corrections. Like his body remembered what standing was, but couldn't remember the order. Timothy? He stood. His head remained tilted at an angle that made my stomach tighten. Then his face turned toward the camera, toward my house. I looked through my window again. Nothing beneath the oak. Back to the phone. Timothy was staring directly at me. Nope. Then he ran. Not shuffled, not limped. Ran, fast, straight across the street, toward my house. I backed away from the window. On my phone, Timothy crossed my yard. I couldn't see him with my own eyes, but the camera could. He reached my living room window. Bam! I jumped. That wasn't through my phone. I heard that with my own ears. The actual window beside me shook. On the camera feed, Timothy slammed both hands against the glass. Bam! A dark smear streaked across the window on my screen. I looked at the real glass. Nothing. Back to my phone. Timothy's face was pressed against it, head crooked, eyes fixed on me. Then, bam! I stumbled backward. Get away from my house! Timothy opened his mouth. No sound came out. Then the camera flickered, and he disappeared. The pounding stopped. I stood in the middle of my living room until my television asked if I was still watching. No, television, I am not. I turned it off. The next morning I opened my curtains carefully. The Higgins family was outside. Timothy. His mother, Marjorie. His father, Warren. All three looked perfectly normal. Warren was loading something into their SUV. Marjorie was carrying a watering can toward her flower beds. Timothy walked out eating something and looking at his phone. I stared. Then Timothy looked toward my house, and what I saw made me step backward. His head was hanging sideways. Same angle as last night. His parents didn't react. Timothy kept walking. Then he smiled at me, and his neck straightened, just like that. Normal again. I closed the curtain. Not participating. That evening I considered calling somebody. Then I imagined the conversation. Hello, police? My neighbor fell from a tree last night, except he didn't, and then his invisible crooked version attacked my window. I'd be enjoying complimentary socks somewhere by lunchtime, so I said nothing. At 10:38 that night, ding. I was back on the couch. I didn't want to open it, but I did. Marjorie Higgins was outside. She was working in her garden. That wasn't unusual. Marjorie loved those flower beds. She'd work out there early morning, late evening, whenever South Georgia heat wasn't trying to roast everybody alive. She clipped a few flowers, pulled a weed, then stopped. Her gardening shears dropped into the grass. Marjorie? She stood, walked past her flower bed, past her mailbox, into the street. She stopped directly in the middle of the road. Headlights appeared in the distance. No, the car was moving fast. Marjorie, get out of the road. She didn't move. The headlights grew brighter. Move! The car reached her. The camera image jolted. I jumped off the couch, ran through my front door, across the yard, into the street. Nothing. No Marjorie, no car, no gardening shears. I stood under the streetlight turning in circles. Not again. I looked toward her house. Dark. Then toward mine. I could see my television glowing through the living room window. I wasn't staying outside this time. I crossed the street, hurried home, stepped inside, and immediately locked the door. Only then did I open the camera again. Marjorie was standing in the street, right where I'd just been. Except she looked different. Hair hanging across her face. Clothes torn. One arm hanging unnaturally. Then she raised her head, looked directly toward my house, and ran. Fast. Oh, cinnamon gravy! She crossed the street. My phone showed her coming up my walkway. Then, bam! My actual front door shook. I jumped backward. On the camera, Marjorie slammed into it again. Bam! I could hear the impact from 3 feet away. The deadbolt rattled. Marjorie! She hit it again. Bam! Then silence. The camera feed cleared. Empty porch. I looked through the peephole. Nothing. I did not open that door. Not even a little. Next morning, Marjorie Higgins was watering her flowers. Normal. Warren stood beside their garage drinking coffee. Normal. Timothy carried something toward his truck. Normal, except not to me. When Timothy turned sideways, his head briefly hung at that impossible angle. When Marjorie bent to water a flower, I saw her damaged version. Just for a second. Then she straightened. Normal. She noticed me. Morning, Leon? I raised one hand. Morning. She smiled. I went inside. That was when I realized something important. Whatever I was seeing at night wasn't happening in the neighborhood I could see with my own eyes. It existed somewhere else, inside the camera's version of my neighborhood. But whatever existed there could still pound on my windows, could still shake my doors, and somehow I had started seeing pieces of it during the day. The third night was Warren. Ding. 11:43 p.m. I opened the camera. Warren Higgins stood beside his garage. He looked up at his roof, then started climbing. Warren? He pulled himself onto the garage, climbed onto the main roof. This wasn't an accident. Nobody was chasing him. He wasn't retrieving anything. He walked deliberately toward the highest point. I stood from my couch. Don't. Warren reached the peak, turned toward the driveway, spread his arms, and swan dived. I shut my eyes. I heard the impact through the camera, then silence. I already knew what would happen if I ran outside, but I couldn't leave him there. I ran, front door, across the street, Higgins' driveway. Nothing. Empty concrete. I stood exactly where the camera had shown Warren land. Then I remembered Timothy, Marjorie. I didn't go back inside. This time, I checked the camera while I was still standing in the Higgins driveway. I opened the live feed, and my blood went cold. Warren was standing right beside me, on the screen. I slowly looked to my right. Nobody. Back to my phone. Warren was inches away. I turned left. Nothing. Phone. Warren. His body bent strangely. His head lifted. He looked at me. Okay. I backed away. On the screen, Warren turned with me. But in the real driveway, I was completely alone. Then Warren smiled and charged. I ran, phone still in my hand. Every few steps I glanced down. Warren was behind me, fast. I looked over my actual shoulder. Nothing. Phone, closer. I ran harder, across the street, through my yard. Phone, closer. Sweet mashed meatballs! I hit my porch. Warren was almost on me. I got inside. Slammed the door. Locked it. Deadbolt. Back door. Windows. Then, ding. I opened the camera. Timothy stood in my yard. Marjorie beside him. Warren beside her. All three looked like the versions I'd watched after their falls. Bent? Damaged? Wrong? Marjorie raised her head. Her mouth opened, and through my doorbell speaker she yelled, "Leon!" I backed away. Then, "It's your turn to join us!" No. I checked the deadbolt. It was locked. I checked it again anyway. Then I looked back at my phone. The Higgins family wasn't alone. Someone stood behind them. A man. Faded orange coveralls. Old climbing harness around his waist. Heavy boots. Rope hanging from his belt. A battered work helmet. One side of his face remained hidden in darkness. On his chest was a faded patch. I enlarged the image. Lowland Tree Service. The man stepped forward, and the Higgins family moved with him. The next morning, somebody grabbed my arm while I was taking out the trash. I nearly left my soul beside the recycling bin. "Leon!" It was my neighbor Barnaby. Barnaby was in his 70s and had lived in the neighborhood longer than almost anybody. "Barnaby, you almost made my breakfast evacuate." He didn't laugh. Instead, he looked at my house, at the camera, then back at me. "You watched." My smile disappeared. "What?" "The Higgins family." I stared at him. "How do you know?" Barnaby's face changed. "You watched them through that camera." "Yes." He closed his eyes. "Oh, Leon." "What?" "You shouldn't have watched." Barnaby took me inside his house. His dining room looked like somebody had emptied 40 years of neighborhood history onto the table. Old photographs, newspaper clippings, construction documents, maps. Then he handed me a photograph. 1984. Our subdivision was still being built, half-finished houses, bare dirt, construction equipment, and the oak tree. Beside it stood a tree worker, orange coveralls, harness, same patch, Lowland Tree Service. Barnaby tapped the photograph. His name was Grange Sedgehill. Grange had been working on the Higgins property before the Higgins house existed. Crews were clearing trees for construction. Something went wrong. Grange took a terrible fall, and according to Barnaby, something about Grange never left that property. He comes back every 20 years. I stared at him. 1984. Barnaby nodded. 2004. I knew immediately. The Kelpermans. Barnaby's eyes met mine. The Kelperman family had lived in the Higgins house before them. Everybody in the neighborhood knew the story. In 2004, the entire family disappeared. Parents, children, gone. Their car remained. Furniture remained. Food remained in the refrigerator. Nobody ever found them. Eventually, the property changed hands. The Higgins family moved in. Now it was 2024, another 20 years. "But why me?" Barnaby pointed toward my house. "Because you watched." "I didn't do anything." "You witnessed it." "So?" In 1984, people didn't have cameras covering every corner of their property. I nodded. In 2004, home security cameras existed, but they weren't everywhere. Doorbell cameras weren't what they are now. He leaned closer. "But 2024? He pointed toward the window. "Everybody watches. Doorbell cameras, phones, dash cameras, security systems. We had unknowingly built Grange Sedgehill the perfect way to spread his curse." Then Barnaby said, "You know the rhyme." I did. Every kid who grew up around our neighborhood had heard some version of it. Nobody knew where it came from. Barnaby spoke slowly. Grange Sedgehill took a fall, took a spill, fell from the sky, smashed his eye, and if you watch, you too shall. He stopped before the last word. I knew it. He knew it. Neither of us said it. Barnaby continued. But there's another verse. I've never heard another verse. Most people haven't. Then he recited it. First your head, then your eye. No more cry, unless you can no longer watch, unless you can no longer see, for your eyes can no longer be. I stared at him. What in the caramel-coated cornbread does that mean? Barnaby looked directly into my eyes. You have to lose your sight. I stood. Nope. Leon. No. Fantastic presentation. Excellent photographs. Strong historical research. Terrible conclusion. Sit down. I am not removing my eyeballs because an angry tree trimmer has unresolved workplace issues. You don't have to remove anything. I stopped. Barnaby touched a scar beside his eye. In 2004, I watched too. That got me back into the chair. You saw the Kelpermans? He nodded, and Grange came for me. How are you still here? I ran. Barnaby told me that in 2004, he'd been watching through an old security camera when he saw things around the Kelperman house that weren't visible to the naked eye. Eventually, Grange came after him. Barnaby ran through his house, knocked a large mirror from the wall. It shattered. Fragments struck his face. For several minutes, all I could see were reflections. He pointed at the scar, and Grange stopped. Why? I didn't understand then. Barnaby reached beneath the table. But I've had 20 years to figure it out. He placed a small case in front of me, opened it. Inside were 2 reflective lenses. I stared. Barnaby. Yes? Are those mirrored contact lenses? Yes. You made supernatural contact lenses? I have a 3D printer. That sentence answered significantly less than you think it did. He picked one up. The curse depends on witnessing. I looked at the lens. Grange needs to know you're watching him. Barnaby nodded. The mirrors create a vision block. A what? Instead of seeing us watching him. I understood. He sees himself. Barnaby smiled. Exactly. I stared at the contacts. Have you tested these? No. Fantastic. I've been waiting 20 years for Grange to return. And during those 20 years, you couldn't find one volunteer? Would you have volunteered? Excellent point. That night, Barnaby came to my house. 11:30. We turned off the lights. No television, no music, just us sitting in the dark, waiting. 11:43. Ding! Person detected. Front yard. I opened the camera. Timothy stood at the sidewalk, Marjorie beside him, Warren beside her. Then Grange Sedgehill stepped from behind the oak, orange coveralls, harness, rope, Lowland Tree Service. Barnaby opened the case. Now! I picked up one mirrored lens. I hate contacts. Leon! My eyes reject cooperation. Leon. Fine. I put them in. The world became strange. Dark around the edges. Reflections everywhere. Barnaby put his in. Then, bam! Timothy hit my window. Bam! Marjorie hit the door. Warren appeared on the camera crawling across my porch. Grange walked toward us, slowly. He reached the porch, stopped, looked through the window, his head tilted. Barnaby whispered, "He can't tell." Grange stepped closer. In my mirrored lenses, his own image reflected back at him. For the first time in 40 years, Grange Sedgehill was forced to watch himself. He recoiled. Barnaby grabbed an old coil of climbing rope. Come on. I stared at him. Outside? We have to end it. I was hoping the contact lenses were the entire package. Barnaby opened the door. So apparently, we were doing this. We ran toward the oak. Grange followed, fast. The Higgins family came behind him. Barnaby had already prepared an old Lowland-style climbing rope. He wrapped it around the oak, threw me one end. "Pull!" We pulled. Wind exploded through the branches. Grange screamed, not like a person, like wood splitting. The Higgins family froze. Grange charged, but everywhere he looked, he saw himself reflected in our eyes. Barnaby could see Grange reflected in mine. I could see Grange reflected in Barnaby's. Grange flickered, young, old. Orange coveralls appearing new, then faded, then torn. Barnaby shouted, "The rhyme!" Together, Grange Sedgehill took a fall, took a spill, fell from the sky, smashed his eye. The oak shook violently. Grange screamed. We continued. "And if you watch..." Then I stopped. Barnaby stopped. We looked at each other. Something suddenly made sense. The children, generation after generation, repeating the rhyme, every 20 years, again, again, again. What if the rhyme isn't warning us? Barnaby stared at me. Grange stopped moving. I looked at him. What if it's keeping him here? Barnaby's eyes widened. The rhyme wasn't protection. It wasn't instructions. It was permission. Every time somebody repeated Grange Sedgehill's story, they remembered him. Every generation taught the next. I looked at Grange. No more rhyme. His expression changed. Fear. I closed my eyes. Barnaby understood. He closed his. Grange had spent 40 years demanding witnesses. So we took them away. No cameras, no eyes, no watching, nothing. Wind roared around us. The oak groaned. Something screamed. Then, silence. I opened my eyes. Grange was gone. The Higgins family was gone. The oak stood perfectly still. The next morning, Timothy Higgins was outside. Normal. Marjorie was gardening. Normal. Warren was drinking coffee. Normal. Timothy saw me. "Hey, Mr. Oleander." I stared at him. "Everything okay?" "Fantastic." Then he pointed toward the oak. "My drone got stuck up there." I looked. Sure enough, 20 feet up. Timothy started toward the tree. "Timothy." He stopped. "What?" I pointed at the drone. "That belongs to the squirrels now." He looked at the tree, looked at me, then nodded. "Yeah, fair. Smartest thing that kid did all week." Barnaby and I removed my doorbell camera that afternoon. I bought an old-fashioned doorbell. Button, wire, ding-dong, no recording, no app, no notifications, and nobody in the neighborhood says the Grange Sedgehill rhyme anymore. At least, I thought they didn't. 3 weeks later, I was walking past the elementary school bus stop. A group of kids were waiting, laughing, playing. Then I heard one little boy singing. Grange Sedgehill took a fall. I stopped. Another child answered. Took a spill. I turned around. "Hey!" The kids looked at me. "Where did you learn that?" One boy shrugged. "My friend." "What friend?" He pointed across the street, toward the old oak. Nobody was there. My stomach tightened. "What does your friend look like?" The boy smiled. "He wears orange." I didn't move. Then the little girl beside him said, "He taught us a new version." I didn't ask. I didn't want to hear it. I started walking. Behind me, the children began singing, softly, together. Leon Oleander watched them fall. I stopped. My blood went cold. The children continued. Watch them one, watch them all. I turned around. Every child was staring at me. Nobody smiled. Then, from somewhere near the oak, I heard ding. The sound of a doorbell camera notification. I didn't have one anymore. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't take it out. Ding. I kept walking. Faster. Another vibration. Ding. I never looked. And I still haven't. Because Barnaby and I got one thing wrong that night. We thought Grange Sedgehill needed a camera. We thought he needed the rhyme. We thought he needed somebody to watch. He didn't. He only needed someone who already had.